Welcome everyone, I'm Flynn and I've been working alongside Eunice and Corbin. Today we're demoing the Pi Jukebox we're group 6 from lab section 3 from 3010A. Our Pi Jukebox aims to solve the real world problem of bringing physical nature back to music. So in the old days you had vinyl records, you could mount them up on your shelves, even just pulling out the record, there was a certain je ne sais quoi to enjoying music and having it in a real world space, and we tried to recreate that with the Pi Jukebox. So our mission was to bring back album art, bring back real world collections of music, and we did that in our own way using NFC tags and a whole other array of things.
Hello everyone, my name is Eunice, and that was Flynn giving the introduction. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the deployment diagram of our Pi Jukebox system. So if you come a little closer, I'll tell you all about it. So up here, in our actual jukebox, we have the Pi Jukebox Pi. And so what the Pi Jukebox Pi does is it reads an NFC tag and then retrieves the data from Firebase. And when it retrieves that data, it's going to send the song name and the artist to the speaker Pi, which is over here. It's connected remotely and can be set aside. And so along with that, it's also going to send information to the Arduino. And the Arduino is going to get that information. It's going to update this display right over here. And so that covers pretty much our deployment diagram. With that Arduino, we're going to have a few more components to it. We're going to have the RGB lighting. We're going to have a push button, a motor, but I'll talk more about that in the hardware. So I'll see you guys there.
Thanks, Eunice, for going over our deployment of our system. So I'm going to be talking about the communication protocols that the Pi Jukebox system uses. So the first communication I'm going to talk about is a jukebox to the Arduino that controls the LCD screen on the front here. So that's done over UART USB serial communication, and with that we're able to send strings to the Arduino so that we can display both the song name and the artist name that created it of the song that's playing right now. The next one is going to be the Jukebox Pi to the Firebase database. So this is where the jukebox goes. Once it scans an NFC tag, gets the value, it'll go to the Firebase database to get the corresponding song information from that tag. That's done over HTTP. The jukebox will also communicate with the speaker Pi that's connected to the speaker. That's where it actually sends the request to start playing the song with that Spotify ID. That's also done over HTTP. And then the GUI that controls the jukebox Pi will communicate with the speaker Pi over HTTP to be able to pause, play, go forward and back in songs. And finally, the speaker Pi will communicate with the Spotify API over HTTP to begin song playback.
So if you'll follow me, I'm going to show you all the hardware components we've used in this project, and there's quite a bit. So the very first thing I'm going to talk about is the card IDs. So the cards actually aren't one big NFC pad, they're actually just one tiny NFC coil at the back of it, and they store the data for the card ID. And then the next part we have is behind the store, we have an NFC reader. And so you might not be able to see it, but believe me, it's not magic, it's there. And so along with that, we have our push button, and that push button is controlling a motor that's in here. And then on top of that, we have an LCD screen that will display song information. And we have a RGB light that will change ambient colors. And so all this hardware is being controlled by Arduinos that are right over here. At the moment we have 2, but later on we're going to cut down to 1. But yeah, that concludes all the hardware.
Okay, so now we're going to go for a full demo of how our project works and the steps that go along with it. So we've got everything running on all the corresponding Pis and Arduinos. All that's left to do is actually use them. So the first step is make sure, everything's plugged in, everything's connected. And so we have our handy dandy push button here. You take one of your cards, the classic Abbey Road album by the Beatles with NFC tag on the back. You stick it into our slot, push the button back up. And as you see, our scanner is already ready. We have Abbey Road, the Beatles is about to play. And as we now see on the GUI, the album has been retrieved. We started playing it. It's now playing on our speaker. And huzzah, we have the magic of music into your living room.
Okay, and so once the NFC tag has been scanned in the jukebox, you want to follow me to the computer here. So you can see this is our Firebase database here. You see the date is April 4th, and then at 6:06 p.m. we played Abbey Road by the Beatles, and then that's the Spotify song ID that we use. And then we also send the user an email notification that's saying Abbey Road by the Beatles was just played on the iJukebox. You can see that was sent 1 minute ago, and that's how we log our request for the iJukebox. So that concludes our demonstration for the project. Now I'm going to talk about what we would do if we had more time to work on the project and wanted to develop it a little bit farther. So our first kind of main goal would be to have multiple speaker pipes so you can get a surround sound effect. We didn't implement that now just because the timing of song playback wasn't working great. It kind of sounded stuttery, so we're going to leave that for a future thing to work on. We'd also want to include a monthly summary of what had been played, kind of like the Spotify Rewind that they put out. Basically just give you like what songs you played, of what genres, for how long, that kind of thing. We'd also want to include extra GUI controls, so like volume, being able to open and close the door from the phone, as well as being able to dim and brighten the display. And then the final thing we want to work on is just enclosing the jukebox case. You can, and as you can see, it's a little bit open on the back right now. And so ideally we would just compress all those electronics, be able to put in the back of the case, have a nice sealed unit there.
So for the final section, we'll all talk about the things we've learned while working on this project. And so for me, the main thing has been learning about the actual process of planning and really flushing out ideas instead of just jumping right in. As you know, there's so many things that you don't think about right away that you really, really need to spend the time and understand what you're doing before you jump in, or else you'll be completely lost, you'll be completely without any idea how to get, especially in our sense, distributed systems all talking to each other, getting everything working in sync, because if you have no concrete plan, you're just going to kind of be going gung-ho and guessing everywhere. So if there's one thing I've learned throughout this whole process, it's that you should definitely work together and come up with a really conducive and proper plan before you get jumping into something of this magnitude.
So one thing I've learned throughout the duration of this project is that things might not go as planned, and you have to be ready and embrace the change. So I'll give you an example. I was in charge of programming all the Arduino accessories that are connected to the jukebox. So that includes the screen, the lights, the button, the motor, and so all those components, they require a lot of power. More power than Arduino can get from a USB port. And so what I did was I connected to an external power supply. But just by mistake, instead of connecting it to the 5 volts power it needs, I connected it to 24 volts. So it's a little bit too much. The wires smelled a little fishy, and so at the end I ruined the whole Arduino Mega, and so we had to improve, adapt, and overcome. And so instead we ended up using 2 Arduino Unos and then changing up our code to make everything work.
Okay, so for my thing that I learned during the project, as evident by the carcasses of my failed attempts on 3D printing, whenever you have to rely on a machine to build something, give yourself lots of extra time and be able to print more than one version. The first time we attempted printing, halfway through the layers started to separate, and that really threw off our timeline for getting everything done. We didn't get it done as quickly as we would like to. And then going through, of course, the first time I made things, a couple of the dimensions weren't quite right in the 3D model for the piece that we were actually using. So I had to change those, and we just got pretty down to the wire in getting everything printed in time to be able to film this video for. So I'd say the thing that I learned is just leave yourself lots of extra time whenever you're creating pieces from nothing, so that you don't end up down the wire like we were on it.